Hi, I'm Harriet Frew, eating disorder therapist, teacher and podcaster, and you're about to start healing from your eating disorder and transforming your life and your relationship with food and body. I've worked in NHS and private practice supporting clients for 20 years, and I believe that recovery is possible for you. This podcast dives into expert interviews, evidence-based psychological approaches, and anecdotal tips from the therapy room from my years of experience. If you're wanting to heal your relationship with food, feel confident in your body, develop self-love and self-acceptance, and create a life of freedom and meaning, then this podcast is for you. Thank you for being here.
So today I have a guest on the show, and I am talking to Rebecca Amos, a woman on a transformative journey of eating disorder recovery and empowerment. Rebecca's life path has been shaped by profound blessings and challenges, including battling an eating disorder. Rebecca was raised in a large family, heavily influenced by a diet culture society where image, food and perfectionism were deeply ingrained values and judgments. She found herself ensnared in a cycle that stifled rather than nurtured her. However, she describes her journey through recovery being a testament to tenacity and the power of self-discovery. Currently, Rebecca is embracing a new chapter in her life. As she continues to navigate post-treatment, she is committed to reclaiming her identity, and Rebecca's recovery vision extends beyond her personal healing, and she aspires to create meaningful impact by hosting eating disorder recovery retreats and serving as a coach, both in eating disorder recovery and life coaching, where she can support individuals and couples in cultivating healthier relationships with themselves and others. And she would also like to write a book to encourage and support others in their healing and possibly even create a sanctuary, a safe haven where individuals can find solace, healing and community as they embark on their paths to recovery and life fulfillment. So Rebecca has found through her experiences that healing is not just about overcoming challenges, but also about transforming them into opportunities for growth and empowerment. And she is dedicated to breaking the chains of the past and fostering a future where everyone can embrace their true selves and relish their lives to the fullest. In the episode today, we're going to hear about Rebecca's healing journey in eating disorder recovery, finding out what really helped her to heal and to navigate the ups and downs of this bumpy road. We will also hear more about the plans she has to give back and to support others. Let's get to the conversation.
Time for a short advertisement break. Are you a counsellor, dietitian, therapist, nutritionist, personal trainer, or other mental health professional? Are you seeing increasing numbers of your clients struggling with eating disorders and disordered eating? And are you keen to learn skills and strategies and build confidence in working with your clients who struggle with these issues? We know that increasing numbers of people are struggling with eating disorders, and we know that 85% of people with eating disorders are not underweight, and this means that many eating disorder symptoms are hidden. The Good Childhood Report in 2021 highlights appearance as a leading cause of unhappiness among young people and indicates that appearance concerns are increasing year upon year. So join my Eating Disorders Training Day on Zoom, face-to-face or self-paced online. It will give you a really good understanding about the different types of eating disorders, including anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder and OSFED, with an introduction to RFED and neurodiversity and eating disorders. You'll explore typical causes of eating disorders and understand how to create a psychological formulation for your client, and this will be brought to you by relating to client examples. I will take you through then my specific knowledge, skills and techniques, which can be used when supporting clients with eating disorders. You will get a full comprehensive training manual and access to the recording of the training afterwards and a full online version of the course. If you want to sign up, please go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk, and you might also be interested in my body image training for professionals too. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast.
Hi there. Thank you.
So, Rebecca, can I firstly get you to introduce yourself to the listeners, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Rebecca Amos. I live in Los Angeles, California. I am a 56-year-old woman, and I work in the life coaching world. I also do a lot of work in a communication psychology model where I get to work with women and I get to work with couples. And sometimes, if I'm really lucky, I get to work with teenagers, which I love to do that.
Okay, lovely. Yeah. Thank you. And tell us a little bit about what's it like in Los Angeles today, because Los Angeles sounds so glamorous compared to where we are in the UK.
Yes. I came here in the early 2000s. I used to live in the Midwest. So I lived in Kansas, I'm from Oklahoma. California, it really is like a whole other country of its own. It's beautiful here. The people are different. It's very crowded. There's lots of cars, but I'm really lucky to live in an area where my husband and I live in an area that's very peaceful. I've got hummingbirds outside my window. I've got bees outside my window, butterflies. So it's really quite beautiful. And there are areas that can be tough because there's so many people here. But yeah, so I love living here. We have 3 adult children. They all 3 live in California as well, in different areas, but we're all close by. That's fantastic. I love that.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing a little bit about your home. It's really nice to
Yeah,
hear about it.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So, Rebecca, you've been on quite a journey, haven't you? You have had anorexia nervosa throughout your life, and you have quite recently, so relatively recently, had sort of treatment and coming out the other side of that. And you've had this amazing healing journey.
Yes.
Could you tell the listeners a little bit about your journey?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. It is somewhat new. I've been in recovery for about 20 months. I'm counting the months, obviously, but I did start experiencing a lot of, I guess I'll say, a lot of difficulty when I was in my early 20s and didn't really recognize that something was going on. I knew that I was losing a lot of weight. I knew I was doing it intentionally. It wasn't like something that was happening by accident. And it was during a time that I was in a new place, starting a new kind of an educational setting. It was actually when I was in college. And I was going to be in a place that I didn't know anybody. I was going to a place where a different language was being spoken. When I look back, that was the beginning of just that disordered eating, a lot of deprivation around different food and exercise became paramount to everything that I did. Fast forward over the next 3 decades, I would say that I was operating kind of under the radar with an eating disorder, disordered eating, restriction. Definitely exercise had become something that I had to do. It wasn't something I wanted to do. It was always what I should do. I needed to do it. I should do it. If I didn't do it, there was guilt. It really just became a part of my DNA. The restriction, the exercise, the body image, how I looked, all of that really became a part of my DNA. And then in my early 50s, I had some health issues, and that really sent me over the edge and exacerbated what was already existing in my mind and in my body. And I actually listened to a podcast thinking, is something going on here with me? Like I was very much into, I'll just say restriction. Then I had a good friend say something to me who said, actually, she was my mentor, and she said, you're really sick. Like something's going on. Something's not right. The way you look, the way you act, you need to get help. And I briefly thought about getting help, and I actually reached out to a couple of treatment programs, but I quickly closed the door on that because it was just too scary and way too scary to admit, and so much shame. Later, about 4 or 5 months later, I had another pretty intensive hospital stay. And that was when I knew that I was in a life or death situation. And that's when I sought out treatment and also began to realize that it wasn't just about the food. It wasn't just about my body. It wasn't about the exercise. It was everything that was underneath that. And that's been my journey, is like literally just stripping the layers and really getting back to who Rebecca is. And that's been my journey over the past couple of years. And it's been, and this may sound crazy, but it's been delightful. Like it's been the most amazing thing I've ever done for myself. And I mentioned earlier, aside from having my children. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, because I think as well, just so helpful for the listeners to hear in a way the real trepidation and fear about recovery. And actually, like you say, it's been a delightful process. I'm sure there's been lots of ups and downs, but it sounds like actually you do not regret one bit embarking on that road and the road you're on.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was a piece for me that because of my age and because of where I landed in my early 50s and things that had happened with my job and relationships, all of that I was doing for so many years, it wasn't working anymore. Well, I don't think it was ever working, but I think it was something that I realized I could no longer do what I had been doing for the fear that something terrible might happen to me health wise. And I hung on for a little bit, even when I went into treatment in the beginning, and I hung on and I thought, I can do this, I can do it my way. After a few weeks, I learned that it was time to turn it all over to the experts, to the professionals that knew better than I knew, because I didn't know. I think they knew more about my body than I knew, but I thought I knew everything. For me, it was really a big part of surrendering and just surrendering to like letting go and just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And for me to reach that point, it was like the gift of desperation. I was desperate. Yeah.
Sure. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you had to really hit that rock bottom to get to that place. I think that's true for many of us, though, isn't it? Sometimes I think it's not uncommon that we think, actually, I can do this on my own. I'm somehow going to kind of hang on to this and do recovery, or I'm going to do it my way.
Yes, exactly. I just didn't have a choice. I didn't feel like I had a choice. And it was a drastic measure for me to go into a treatment program. I've never done it. I had never done that before. And go into a residential setting. Being at my age, it was really scary and amazing.
So I'd
Yeah.
definitely like to ask you a bit more about that treatment program and what you went through. But firstly, I just want to sort of pick up on the fact that it sounds like for many years you were really struggling, but you were kind of a bit under the radar. Can you tell us a bit more, like, what was it like day to day in terms of what you had to do and how did it impact your life? I'm just thinking as well, a lot of people will be listening that thinking, I'm not sick enough. This isn't really a problem. And I'm sure how you were living will be very relatable.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, when I look back, I realize that it's almost as if I was in shackles. It was almost as if it was of my own doing, but I had put these shackles around my body to where everything was pre-planned and measured. And I don't mean literally measured, but just in my mind. How's this going to look? Okay, when am I going to exercise? Okay, what am I going to eat? Okay, how am I going to be at this function? Okay, what am I going to do here? My mind was always occupied by when I was going to eat or not eat, exercise or not exercise, how I was going to look or not look. I was 100% distracted and completely and preoccupied with all of these things. When I think back on that, living my life like that, it was all going to be, I guess it was my happiness and the way I was going to get through my day was dictated around the weight, how much I weighed, again, what I ate or didn't eat, how much exercise. But again, I was preoccupied. That was all I thought about. And I think to the detriment of my relationships with my children, with my spouse, with my friends. I lived in a prison, it felt like.
Yeah, no, sure. And do you think when you were in that prison, did you realize that you were in a prison, or did that just feel like this is how I live my life?
I did not realize it because I looked around. I saw other people doing it. I saw people in the media doing it. I saw my own family members doing it. And it became normal. It just became a normal way of living. And I thought that's the way everyone thought. I thought everyone did it like that until I realized, no, there's something not right here.
Time for a short advertisement break. I want to tell you about Mindy Gorman Plutzer. She is a board certified integrative health coach, certified eating psychology coach, and certified functional nutrition counselor. In 2012, she created the Freedom Promise in an effort to help clients transform their relationship with food from one mired in fear and confusion to one that is loving, nourishing, and sustainable. Inspired by her own recovery journey, she developed a signature system comprised of 7 steps.
The framework offers an alternative approach to recovery as it's aligned with the principles of functional medicine. All systems are connected, everybody is unique, and everything matters. She guides you to listen to the wisdom of your body so you discover an empowering nutrition and lifestyle protocol that speaks to your unique needs. If you hunger for food freedom, Mindy invites you to a complimentary discovery session. During this powerfully eye-opening conversation, you'll explore the steps that will help you transform the energy of obsession to making lasting and sustainable changes in your life, including your relationship with food and your body. If you're seeking freedom from a relationship with food that's holding you hostage, if you're longing to find your enough, if you're feeling inspired by the possibilities that await you when you create the life you deserve and desire, contact Mindy today. The link to do so is in today's show notes. And then when you went into the treatment center, what kind of happened there? Because it sounds like you had to surrender, and that was
Yeah,
so
I
once you
did.
surrendered, what happened?
I had no idea what to expect. I only knew that this mentor had said to me, here's a name of someone to call. And I called this particular treatment program, and then I called some others. And what was interesting is when they did the intake, I remember thinking, oh, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. Maybe they just want me to come in and just maybe do like a couple days a week and things like that. But then as I went through the intake, the questions they asked me, I was shocked because I had no idea that some of those questions that I answered yes to were even an indicator that I had a problem. But then when they asked the questions, I thought, oh my gosh, I do all of these things. When I finally decided on the program I was going to go into, which was one that was so attentive to me and they kept following up with me, they literally texted me the day I went, the first day, to ask me to let them know when I was leaving home, when I was in the parking lot, and then when I arrived. That was really beautiful. And that was just like an outpatient program at first. So I went to like a partial hospitalization program, which is just down the street from my house. And when I first got there, I literally had no idea what to expect. And now looking back, I realized I literally was there for them to, first and foremost, show me how to eat. I didn't know how to eat. And I think that was very beneficial for me to understand that baseline. But then, of course, there was a lot of therapeutical work that I needed, obviously. But then after a few weeks of doing that, then they shared with me because I hadn't surrendered yet. I was still doing what I thought I could do at night when I went home and on the weekends and things like that. But they suggested that I go into a residential program. And my immediate thought was, absolutely not. There's no way. There's no way. But I did. My husband and I talked about it, and we both agreed that why not just try it? Why not just see if it's something that would help me? And I flew several states over. I live on the West Coast, and I was almost on the East Coast when I finally got there. And it was really scary at first. I reached out to a friend that I had met in the outpatient program I was in at first. And I told her I was going to leave. I'm not going to stay in residential. And all she said to me was, stay. And I stayed. I stayed. Mm-hmm. I was in treatment for about 6 months. So PHP, residential, and then back to PHP, and then IOP. And then now I have an outpatient treatment team that I see regularly.
Mm. Yeah. And how did you find sort of starting to eat more again? And how was all of that process? Because I think that's something that many people are terrified of. And I'm sure that you were.
I was really terrified. And that was when I just decided that I would do what they told me to do. Because again, I was at that point where I didn't know what to do anymore, especially how I was feeling mentally, physically, spiritually. It was hard. And I was told that, yes, it's uncomfortable at first, but over time it's going to get better. And I trusted that. And I think what I also did was I learned how to trust my treatment team. I learned how to, when they said, Rebecca, do this. And I said, okay, or let me think about it. And then I would eventually do it. But that was hard. And I look back and realize that my body was so happy. It was so happy. It was functioning. I was functioning. My brain was functioning. Speaking about it, like even just today, everything is different physically because I feel better. I just feel better. And it was hard. It was hard to eat more. It was hard to make sure that I was eating my meal plan. That was the basis of every day. That was like non-negotiable for me. I had to eat what I promised myself I would eat, what I promised my treatment team I would eat. And it made a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. And could you tell us a little bit about the therapy side? Because I guess an eating disorder is often a coping strategy, isn't it? It's like solving problems for us in some shape or form. What did you sort of learn about yourself in terms of like, how do you think anorexia had been helping, kind of in inverted commas, how it had been helping you or helping you cope?
I grew up in a big family and I was the youngest. Once you are the youngest in a big family, at least in my experience, I didn't get nourished. I didn't get fed, not literally. I mean, I was fed, but I was not emotionally nourished. I was not emotionally fed. And as that became more and more of the rule as opposed to the exception, that's how I experienced life was I was not adequately nourished emotionally. And I think that then that turned into depression and anxiety. I didn't want to feel alone. I didn't want to feel like I was being ignored. I didn't want to feel. And for me, the eating disorder became about I had control over this one thing. And whenever I felt bad, whenever I felt anxious or depressed or lonely or sad or whatever, I always turned to it. Or if I felt disconnected from people, that was my connection to this eating disorder. And I remember one time listening to a podcast and they said that the eating disorder, this woman was talking about the eating disorder was her best friend. And that was for me too. Like that was my best friend. For me, it was about connecting to this nebulous thing that really didn't exist, but it definitely gave me a sense of control over a life that I didn't have control over.
Mm.
And when I started feeling, when I started being okay with my feelings and started also recognizing what I had done to my heart and soul, literally, was when kind of the floodgates opened and I was able to let myself finally feel. And now I do the same thing. I just let myself feel. So I think it served that purpose. The eating disorder did. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I think many people will relate to that actually, because I think it can feel kind of like this friend, this safe thing, this kind of life raft, this thing that you can turn to really, and that will keep you safe when you have felt alone or things have been overwhelming or unmanageable or you haven't had your emotional needs met.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that nourished piece is such a strong word in my vocabulary now because I just want to make sure that I'm nourished on all the domains, like all the levels in life, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, all of it, even sensually, and just making sure that I nourish myself holistically. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
How do you think the function of the eating disorder changed over the years? Like, I guess it sounds like being the youngest child and in this big family and probably getting a little bit overlooked. It's just so many people needing attention, I guess. And then you talked about
Yeah.
when you were at college and the change and transition and a lot of uncertainty. But do you think that thread kind of ran through your life, really? Like, did the eating disorder did the grip onto the eating disorder become more intense, perhaps when you were navigating more challenging periods of your life?
Yes, absolutely. For me, because I remember during transitions and difficult times, I've had a few challenging times in my life. Who hasn't? But I definitely it ramped up during those times. And then during a time that was really, really, I'll say devastating for me, again, when I was in my early 50s, was the time when it was the worst. And it really amped up. And then it didn't work anymore, just didn't work. I don't think it ever worked. I just think I thought it worked.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 And what was it like when the floodgates opened and you started to feel for the first time for a long time?
Wow. I had an amazing sense of freedom. So, freedom has been another big word in my vocabulary is learning that I'm free and I'm free to feel, I'm free to heal, I'm free to recover. So, the freedom has been amazing. And when the floodgates opened, it was really about like now I have words for how I feel. Now I can say, gosh, I'm really sad today. Or, you know what? I'm really mad and I'm really sad. And I get to tell people that. And it's okay. I don't have to say, like, I'm fine, I'm good. No, everything's fine. But even with my husband, like, I just get to be me. That's part of those floodgates opening. I think when I was a little girl, there were a lot of rules around feelings. You know, we don't feel mad and we don't feel sad. And those are a big part of who I am. I've learned too that like, yeah, I'm a sensitive person and I can definitely feel the room, but that's okay. And I don't have to squash it. So I think I get to live out loud and that's a part of the floodgates opening.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about your connection with your loved ones, because they must see such a difference between where you were before and where you are now. And I'm sure that's been really lovely.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just talking with my friend before a little bit ago this morning, and she's the one who told me you need to get help. And I trust her so much. She talks a lot about my recovery and how different I am. I don't know if I see it, but I feel it. I know that I have a different relationship with them now because I feel much more authentic with them. With my husband, same thing. And my friends really, I guess they reflect back to me what I was like and then now what I'm like now. And I think what they see is the authenticity and being able to be me. And that's so huge because they also show me their authenticity. And that's a beautiful thing to have that connection and reciprocity in a relationship. My husband is the same. Like he reciprocates too and shows me more and more who he is. And what a beautiful thing. It's that vulnerability. I would say authenticity, vulnerability, and we get to show how we are on any given day. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it sounds wonderful. And what else have you learned about yourself? Like it sounds like you recognize you're a sensitive person, you have big feelings, you're embracing that, going with that. What else
Yeah.
have you learned about yourself? Do you think you've been very cut off from?
I've learned that I'm creative because there are a lot of doorways that have opened for me throughout this recovery process. And I've learned that I get to offer back to people some things that I've been able to gain and learn. So I think that goes back to the creativity aspect. Let's see. I think that just going back to that piece of I get to be me. One of the things I'm really aware of now is there's a little voice inside of me that's always talking to me, and I get to listen to it. And by that little voice, I mean like the voice that tells me what I'm passionate about, what I'm creative about. I'm learning to trust myself. That's what it is. I'm learning to trust myself. And I didn't always trust myself. I always trusted everyone outside of me and how I should live my life, what I should do, who I should be, how I should be. So trusting myself, that's what it is.
Mm. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it sounds wonderful. Like the whole reconnection with yourself, isn't it? And that self-trust, that authenticity, that vulnerability. Yeah, and I think so many people will relate actually, like about the before you were saying everything was about externally, people telling you how you should live your life, what you should do, trying to follow rules, I guess. Whereas now you can kind of go inwards and you can start to sort of listen to that little voice. And over time, you develop more and more self-trust, don't you? You start to kind of hear the voice more and be able to respond to it and feel connected to it.
It's so true. I do. I read something the other day about connection being when you feel seen, heard, and valued. And I thought about people in my life and do they see me? Do they value me? Do they hear me? And then I thought, no, no. Do you see you? Do you hear you? And do you value you? Because what you just said, being connected to myself, what a gift. What a gift. Yeah.
So I know, Rebecca, as well, a lot of your journey is not just about you, but it's also like you have plans and sort of things going forward, maybe writing and coaching and maybe even a sanctuary. So do you want to just
Yeah.
say a little bit more about some of the ideas you have and plans?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So my big dream is to get a little bit further into my recovery so that I'm a little bit further along. I know there's something in the eating disorder recovery world about being recovered for a couple of years. I'd like to be a retreat leader to where I bring people together who are in recovery, especially from an eating disorder. And I've been talking about it for several years now, but before it was more just about recovery. And now it's more focused on those people who are in eating disorder recovery. I started a book when I was in treatment. I've put it aside for a little bit, but I'll come back to it probably in the fall. So I think ultimately I would like to create a sanctuary, a safe haven for people who are just coming out of treatment and or who maybe are in treatment. I don't think it really matters, but people who are seeking recovery. And I don't know what that looks like. Right now, I put on workshops, day workshops, where I bring women together and we do a lot of intention setting. We do certain rituals, but around themselves, like around ourselves and setting intentions. Yeah, I hope to create that on a bigger scale. I'm thinking about pursuing being an eating disorder coach, recovery coach. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see. For me, the horizon is very open right now.
Yeah, no, sure. Well, it sounds lovely actually, because I think it will evolve, won't it? You will take the next step and the next step, and yeah, you will
Yeah.
kind of know when the time is right, won't you? One step at a
Yes,
time.
I agree. I definitely think I will know when the time is right. There's an art therapy piece in there too that I'm really interested in. So, how do I bring it all together? It feels very tangible, like it's just right there. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. How exciting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Rebecca, for anyone listening who is just feeling really stuck and quite scared, maybe about thinking about recovery, what would you sort of say to them if they're in that sort of dark place?
Yeah. I think for me, it was really about trying, like literally just trying and seeing if you can do it. I think one of the biggest things for me, again, was that surrender piece, being willing to surrender. And it doesn't have to happen all in one swoop. For me, it was a day at a time, it was a minute at a time, hour at a time. So I think it's definitely possible. And one of the things that has been helpful for me is having people that I can rely on for support because, yeah, I think when I went into treatment, I told people because I didn't want to have secrets because I wanted to come home to that. I wanted to be able to tell people. I think my piece is making sure that you have a community, getting a support system. Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it is just really helpful because, and I think as well, because if you are fairly newly kind of out of the trenches, aren't you? It's very relatable for people as well.
What's helped me too since I've come out of an actual treatment program is immersing myself into support and community and always making sure I have someone I can reach out to. And that's a big part of recovery is that connection piece, making sure that you feel connected to people, having to put yourself out there. That's scary too.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
Rebecca, where can people find you if they would like to perhaps send you a message, get in touch with you, find out about your coaching? Yeah.
Absolutely. My Instagram handle is raw for re. That's RAHFORREE. And that's at Instagram. And then I do have a website where you can contact me. It's Rebecca at RebeccaAmos.com.
Yeah, sure. Well, I shall put those in the show notes because I'm sure that some people listening might find this very relatable and would just really like to reach out to you.
That would be great. And one more thing I did want to share when you asked me earlier, like what would I say to someone who's trying to figure out if they're going to treatment or if they're struggling? Something that always stands out to me is do more of what makes you uncomfortable. Getting out of your comfort zone, just do a little bit each day. What makes you uncomfortable? For me, it was my meal plan. It was reaching out to friends. It was giving myself restorative rest, like those types of things. Just kind of doing the opposite of what you think you should do or what you've been programmed to do, what you've programmed yourself to do. Yeah, just do more of what makes you uncomfortable.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And it sounds like that's hard in the short term, but actually it gets you going in the direction that you want. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. I think it's just been a really touching conversation, actually. Just so inspiring to hear about your journey. And because I know there are a lot of people that listen that have struggled for so many years. And sometimes they just feel, oh, it's just hopeless. I'm never going to recover. It's too late for me. I just think it's so encouraging to hear your story and to know what is possible. It's never too late, is it?
No, it's never too late. No, absolutely. And yeah, thank you. It's been a really lovely time talking with you.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. Do go and check out all of Rebecca's info in the show notes. If you're not following me already on Instagram, do seek me out, the eating disorder therapist _. And for further support with your relationship with food, do go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk. If you enjoy this podcast, I would be so grateful if you'd follow, rate and review, as it helps it reach so many more listeners. And if you're a counsellor or psychotherapist supporting people with eating disorders, you might be interested in my eating disorders and body image training days for professionals. Link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.